And now we will go to our after show. Unfortunately, Clark Cooney, MMR, is still fishing. So you're stuck with me for the after show again. So I will ask if there's anyone new that hasn't been on our show before that would like to say something. And we'd love to hear from you. And if there's not anyone new, then anybody old that would like to make a statement, we welcome that too. So with that said, I'll open the show up to new people and old people. And it went awfully quiet, awfully fast.
Well, I would have to say I'm not necessarily old, but haven't been here for a while.
Yes, you have. How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing fairly well. This is the first time in a long time since I've actually gotten here basically at the beginning. So I actually saw the whole thing, even though my computer is not very happy with me right now for some reason, but I'm here.
Well, welcome. I'm glad you are. And glad your job is going well for you.
Yeah, they're now cross-training me from I've been doing shipping and receiving, and now they're cross-training me into silk screening. So I'm taking that as they're cross-training me, they might like me. So
That's great. That's great. You ever finished that bridge?
Which one?
The covered bridge that you were working on? The one that Rick and Maureen make? The Hunter Line model.
You mean this one?
Yes, that one. Looks like it came nice.
Yes. I am building a small little diorama for it so it could turn around and look even nicer theoretically. Also, I wound up finally, after a long dramatic getting it here, I finally bought a I couldn't buy David Schultz micromark lathe, but I bought one, and it took about a month to get it, because first what had happened is when I put the order initially in, my bank turned around and said, "Hey, this is I'm not really spending much, and all of a sudden there's this big, huge ticket item and all that." They're like, "Hey, wait a minute," and so that delayed it. And then when it came to Micromart itself, their credit card company turned around and said, "Well, we don't recognize this bank." So it's like one of those things of, then I had to do a wire transfer. and then after this, then it finally gets to be shipped out, and I'm like, cool. And then it's like, oh, you'll be getting the package between 10 and I think it was like 10 or 2 or something like that. I'm like, that's not going to work. I'm going to be at work. Then I got another one saying, oh, be maybe to 7 p.m. So I'm like, all right, I'll be home by then. Well, apparently for the next 3 days, I kept on trying to deliver it 11 o'clock in the morning where I'm at work. I even left a sign saying that, hey, I will be returning at this time. Nope. After the third time, they wound up sending it back to Micromart. Micromart is on the same time. I'm like, hey, this is what's happening. And they didn't give me the option to send it to my workplace. The thing, because I work in shipping and receiving, it'd be easy to get a hold of it. And then basically they finally gave me that option. Hey, can we send it to your workplace? I'm like, yes, I wanted that to begin with. So eventually, after about almost a month I finally got the machine, but I've assembled it because some assembly is required, but I haven't actually played around with it yet because I'm trying to figure out how to, how to have it set up. I didn't account for how I'm going to set up the tools and all that, so that's what I'm sort of playing around with right now. But I am making small dioramas for all 3 line bridges that I have gotten from them. I have also have not claimed my prize from them yet either. That's one thing I got to remember.
So what lathe did you end up with, Ed?
I've wound up with the hot rod version of the 7x16.
Oh, okay. All right. Should do you well.
Yeah. I got the hot rod version of it mainly because of the metal gears and the digital display.
Sure.
It's one of those things of, I got some extra parts that make it look prettier. But I have it right now. I have it mounted up to a tool cabinet that I bought from Home Depot. So,
all right.
Yeah. Now I've actually what I've done is I've actually taken the chip tray off, so I can actually clean under it easier without getting chips stuck underneath the chip tray.
Sure.
But yeah, it's one of those things of I'm still thinking on it's right over here. That's why I keep on looking over here. I have a very small apartment. That's why I got the green screen because it's like yeah, I'm actually I'm still thinking on getting some accessories like the 4-jaw chuck.
Okay.
Since I don't have room for a milling machine, I'm going to get the milling machine attachment, which I think is going to be fine for HO scale stuff. And some other small little details and all that. But I pretty much right now I need to practice on the machine.
Yeah. There's lots of good YouTube videos also where you can look up, simple machining techniques and such, and they'll teach you some of the basics if you're confused on any of it. There's thousands of videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
So just type in the machine you've got and, want to know the basics, and they'll show you some of that stuff. And that'll help a lot.
Yeah. There's actually not that much out there with the micromark version of the mini lathe.
Sure.
But Chinese lathe, you got there's I think it's Frank Hoos, who actually has an entire channel dedicated to the Chinese mini lathe and the mini mill. Another one that I watch sort of kind of religiously is Blondie Hacks. She's got a much larger machine. She's got a larger machine, but she's right now building a steam engine, which apparently the kit barely fits in her equipment. It's almost I think it's almost like a 12-inch tall vertical machine, and it's pushing there's times it's like it's like that much clearance, trying to put. But yeah, I've been watching a lot of the different machine channels and stuff like that. There's Artisan Makes, I think, also has the Harbor Freight version. I'm trying to think of some of the others, which I'll probably think of eventually. But yeah, it went together fairly easy because of the funny thing is it came in 3 boxes, and the one box said, it's like, oh, it's a team lift and all that because it's over 60 pounds. And I'm like, 60 pounds? I just threw it over my shoulder and picked it up, But that was the main that box had the main bed and the motor on it. Everything else came in the other box, which I had to attach to. Now, did yours come in as separate boxes, or did it come as one unit?
No, the main bed came in one box, and then the other parts. It otherwise probably would have exceeded what UPS would accept at the time. I think they had a limit of 75 pounds at the time. So the bed came, and then a lot of the accessories came in separate boxes. So it required some assembly.
All right.
So
Yeah, a lot of the YouTube videos I've seen, they have it already pre-assembled, but it
sure.
also looks like they came by not by UPS or FedEx.
So many of those castings too that come from China and places are full of sand when you get them. So even if it is pre-assembled, I'd recommend pulling the whole thing apart, clean out everything with Varsol and re-lube it all, because otherwise you're gonna grind down your ways and shafts pretty fast. Something to check anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was a mention of doing the same thing. Apparently Frank Who's his channel, apparently he's got almost every variation of the same blade. He's got the Harbor Freight version, the Grizzly version, the Micromark version. One thing I like about the Micromark version is that the screws are 20 per inch, whereas all the other variations are 16 to an inch.
Yeah.
Which the thing is that when I first was looking into it, because each turn was a certain amount plus a little extra and all that, I at first I thought maybe the threads of all the machine would be metric because it's made in China, and I believe all the fittings are metric. So I made the assumption that it's a metric machine, but they just put imperial markings on it. But then when I did the calculations, like, wait, that doesn't come up correctly for metric. But it was later on that I found out that it was 16 per inch, which when I took a small course on machining and all that, they always did everything into thousandths and all that, and 16 doesn't quite fit into I wound up getting trained out of Bridgeport, so it's like I'm used to having the thousandths and stuff like that. So that's another reason why I went with the Micromark one.
Yep.
And the thing is, I've the whole drama with getting it here, I didn't have a problem with Micromark. It was like everything that had to, it was either what I was, my bank, or it was the companies that we were dealing with, or the transportation company. It had nothing to do with Micromark.
I've never had any trouble with Micromark. They've always been pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and most of their tools that I bought, I bought a couple of things that didn't live up to what I thought they were going to be, but most of it does. I've never had a problem that way.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt there. I just want to know what Chris is working on, because he's holding his head like he's in pain. Yeah.
He's not going to tell us, is he?
Not sweet.
yeah. He's showing it.
Oh,
That's a,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on fixing up the tank car. I put out back in January. I think Ed, you might have a couple of them, don't you?
the 25 footers, yes.
Yep.
Not
Yeah,
the newer one.
I decided to upgrade it. So this is going to be it's going to have some nice little tie rods and stuff on it. So I think it's a little more a couple 3D printed parts on it as well. So
Have you finished the barge yet?
no, as a matter of fact, I got in very interesting story. I got into the Army Corps of Engineers website, went into their history and dug it out. I actually found it and it's actually called a debris boat, and it had a front end loader on it. And this particular one, in fact, I even matched up the number. The number on it is BD5 for Baltimore Division number 5. So apparently the Baltimore Division of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has a number of boats, and this particular one, it was built in 1968, taken out of service in 1988, I think it was. But the pictures that are of it on the internet are from the Air Florida crash, when the Air Florida airplane crash landed in the Potomac with the ice problems.
Yeah.
And so it's got its little spot in history, but it's just amazing. And I've contacted the Corps of Engineers to say, hey, what information can you provide? And I'm surprised because they don't really know a heck of a lot, but yet you can put together quite a bit. It's actually 30 feet long. The model that I did is 31 feet. So I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
I think the height is about right. It had a 220 horsepower General Motors engine in it, diesel, which matches up with what this thing has, or with the one I have pictures of. But it's pretty neat. Now I'm going to see if I can get Dylan to build a front end loader for it, because part of bringing a debris barge or a debris boat was that it had essentially a front end loader piece on it where it could go in. I assume it was mainly for picking up wooden debris and rivers and things like that. I think that was the purpose of it. And it just so happened that they ended up using it for the Air Florida crash because of its unique capabilities. There was another one, I think it was BD4 or BD6 was an exact replica of it, but then whichever either the 4 or the 6 was a little bit different. But it's been a neat little search. In fact, I'm surprised that usually about once a day I get an email from somebody at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers saying, hey, we found this on it. And I didn't get any today, but it's pretty interesting. So they're actually I think that the historians at the Air Corps of Engineers are actually pretty interested in it themselves, because they don't know. Apparently the records on it are there's pretty much non-existent. There's some pictures. There's in fact, how I found out about the horsepower and all that was I guess there's a report that they do annually, and they had one from 1976 that listed it.
So the Corps custom made this themselves? This is an in-house kind of throw together?
That's what we're trying to figure out now, because that Geneseo or whatever it was in Missouri, that had actually closed before this thing was built, but it resembles boats that were built there. So the question is how is it that they went from those boats to producing these boats? So I'm thinking that it was probably built in Philadelphia. Somebody probably knew about the design and knew what the Baltimore Division wanted to do. They're looking for debris boats. So, okay, you can't take a pontoon boat out there and a net and go scooping stuff out of the river with that. So I think they figured out that this was lighter than a regular push boat, but it was enough to do what they wanted it to do. So it was good for picking up.
Going to be an unusual model for a flat car.
Yeah. The flat car is sitting right here. I haven't put the deck on it yet.
Yeah.
But you can see it there. I've got to make sure that the ends are a little bit too long, but I've got to make sure that it's going to fit around some curves, because it is pretty big.
Is that ON30, Chris?
No, it's HO.
HO?
Hey, Chris, you mentioned Philadelphia. I see you're just about an hour and a half from Philadelphia.
Yep.
So do you ever go to Wanamaker's? Macy's?
At Christmas time, we went there once.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yep. In fact, Comcast actually has a better display.
Oh. Well, we were going to have that guy, the head organist there, come out here to do a concert, but he caught COVID at the last minute, so he didn't make it out here.
Yeah, you got to be careful with going into cities anymore. My gosh, I was looking at the crime rates.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm kind of, it's funny where we are. You're either like Baltimore oriented or you're Philly oriented. I'm more Philly oriented. And I actually work in Delaware, so I go into Wilmington, and it's got quite a reputation for being a bad town. Anytime we go to concerts up there, it's really too bad that the crime rate is so high, because it's really convenient. I mean, I can be in my car in like 5 minutes, headed down I-95, and be home in like less than an hour out of Wilmington. But you leave a concert venue and there are cops everywhere, because they don't want anything to happen, because it's like if there's a headline out there about how somebody went to a concert at the Grand and they got killed on the way home, that would be horrible for the Grand.
Yeah.
What a world.
Yeah, in fact, one of my coworkers was driving home from work one day, saw some dude get shot in the street, and was like, "What in the world?" So,
David Schultz, I haven't forgotten trying to put together this operating segment for the show, but I'm having trouble getting it coordinated with the OPSIG people. So I haven't forgotten it, and I do want to do it, but I'm not sure. I'm just not sure how to put it together now, to tell you the truth.
Sure. That's not a
Okay.
problem.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it seems like a lot of people have different ideas about what operation is and what the show should be. And frankly, the more I talk about it to people, the more confused I get about really where this is going, and who's really going to be involved in it, because I'm not sure the OPSIG does right now. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the sense I get.
I think the challenges in operations are, there's definitely a range of people doing operations, from basic switching to incredibly pedantic ways of running large railroads. And I think it depends a lot on where you are there.
Yeah.
I have to run, but I'm going to give you just a little quick intro here. I'm going to
Send me that corrected slide for Kristen if you get a chance.
I will.
I need to use that. Thank
So
you.
anyway, this is you guys can see this. This is actually a building. I had a stand in on a pier. This is the Standard Oil pier in Monterey. This is actually the building. I wanted to show it to you. This is actually, and I'll use the other camera in a moment. It's actually all 3D printed, all the framing. The roof is printed as a bunch of pieces and glued together, and you can see it actually follows pretty well framing techniques. Let me switch my camera here and you can see it in a little more detail. So if you look at it here, you can actually see, all the individual pieces there in the roof, and this is a solid piece. And then if you look inside the building, it's not really easy to see from here, but there's actually 3 layers of the wall. There's the framing, there's the cross pieces on the inside that actually do the framing triangulation. And then if you can barely see them, but there's actually another layer that's actually the furring strips that the siding goes to, that go horizontally. So vertical studs, angled cross pieces, and then actually the pieces on the wall. So when you look at it up close, you can actually see a gap. You kind of see it there between the studs and the aluminum siding.
Yep.
And so just kind of the roof and it has lighting in it. So finally getting some projects done. Then another one here that might find interesting. This is a Frenchman River Model Works, their little ship, and I added on quite a while back to make it a fly bridge, which is what all of the West Coast fishing boats have. So that was actually done in styrene. But what I've done now is this is actually a fairly quick, took about half a day of doing a little bit of work and then printing it. This is a 3D printed interior that you can kind of see if you look at it up close. You can see it's got the door is on it there. It's got a little chart table and then the wheel. And what's on the top there is actually lighting. So that's actually a very small, basically box to put a red and white LED in. So I'll have a switch so you can change it from red lighting inside to white lighting. And the LEDs will sit in that little box. And then this whole thing just slides up. It just slides up in and it'll glue in before this is installed after it's painted. That's my next step is I got to paint this. So should have that whole scene will be done over the next couple of weeks.
That'll be a neat
Everything
model.
looks great.
What's
So
the
yeah,
rest? What's the rest of the boat look like?
it's a fishing boat. It's basically, somebody use my camera back. It's probably about 35 feet in O scale. So, it's about 7-8 inches long.
Yeah.
And it's a waterline resin piece. Oh, actually, it's right here. I didn't realize it was here. So yeah, actually, this is what it'll look like when it goes together. This goes on the top because it turns out all the boats in Monterey had, and then the interior is set up inside of it when you get it done. So yeah,
That'd be neat.
yeah, and it sits next to the fuel pier. So the fuel pier has, this building on it and has a pier with all the tanks and all the hosing, and the boat will be sitting like it's getting. It turns out when the boats came to the fuel pier, they'd tie up when they had their parties. So all the families of all the fishermen and friends would go out on the boat for a party, and they would tie up at the fuel pier and take pictures of the boat with everybody on it. So I have all these great pictures of boats at the fuel pier with lots of people on them. So good historical record. Nobody takes a picture of anything of just interest. They take pictures when there's a family celebration and you get the historical stuff in the background.
That's neat.
So
Looks great, Phil.
That would
Thank
be
you.
something really different to see on a model railroad, Phil. No
Yep.
question about it.
yeah, and I should be, hopefully I'll get pretty much done with some stuff for the My Build next week, but then definitely for the next one.
Well, I found a new car that I'm going to build. In
Oh.
1947, there was a motor company called Playboy in Buffalo, New York. And the magazine is named after that company. Company went out of business in, I think, 51, something like that. It made a total of 97 Playboy two-seat sports cars. And the logo is just something else. I mean, it's really, it's a neat logo. With a Playboy Motor Company.
They were in LA, weren't they? I think they were in
Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York. I thought there was one something like that in New York, in LA, but
Yeah. Oh, my two brothers.
Hey, Phil, what 3D printer are you using?
it's all just a filament print.
Oh, it
It's
is
all
an
just
SP,
printed on
okay.
an Ender 3. So everything's printed as pieces and layered together, because it turns out as you print, the framing stuff prints really well on that.
Mhm.
And then what I do is I spray it with after I printed them, I basically set them down and spray them with filler primer,
Right.
and that lets you do the wood graining on them. I've got a clinic at some point I need to set up and go through it for you guys. What you do is by doing 3 or 4 coats of filler primer, you get enough paint buildup that you can use a jeweler's saw to basically scrape across and put wood grain into it. So when you paint it, then the colors, you've actually got some wood grain in it.
Right. Right.
but yeah, it's kind of just all layered together. So it's kind of trying to get that technique for another building I'm building. So this was the small one. And then I've got a bigger one that's the one I built was very large, more of a warehouse, kind of an intermediate one that's going to have part of it, and again having more detail in it. So, and
Did
it's
you-
pretty solid. I mean, the idea that you can take a model like this and just you could drop it and it's not going to damage it.
Those layers, I suspect, would stiffen it all up quite well.
Yeah, and it's just exactly, and it's got a wood floor. The floor is wood. But the sides and walls, I glued them together and actually put all the siding on the walls and then put the floor in at the end. And it seems to hold together pretty well. And it gives you that kind of more detail that you only can get with scratch building, in an interior with wood. But if you did it with wood, it'd just be terribly fragile.
Yeah. You ever
So,
finished the hotel?
I haven't gotten to that's a later project this year. The problem was I stopped working and then I spent a month with COVID, and it's been the last week and a half that I've really been feeling good since I've decided not to work anymore. So
Yeah.
have time to actually do stuff. So anyway, I'm going to bid you all adieu, and we will see you in a week.
Thanks so much, Phil.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, Phil.
Hey, Jim, I think I'd like to circle back around to the discussion that was started in the pre-meeting
Okay.
on the S scale and 1/64 scale modeling world,
Sure.
if that's all right.
Yes, sir.
That was a pretty good discussion, or the start of a pretty good discussion. And when it comes to manufacturers, the statement being made that don't believe that the farm employee guys would like to be lumped in with the model railroaders. They're called a model railroader. If it would get manufacturers to look at the scale and accept that with no issues, if it would get products out there that work in the 1/64 scale modeling world. And I found that discussing with, hundreds of farm toy modelers. They don't care if they're lumped in with model railroaders if it gets the product out there, especially after having Woodland Scenics tell a group of 1/64 scale farm modelers when they'd gone with funding to cover the tooling to have figures upscaled a few years ago, that Woodland Scenics had absolutely no interest in doing it because Flyer was dead.
I agree with you. That's exactly the kind of thing that I'm hearing. And I'm hearing it from the farm modelers. I do not hear it from model railroaders.
Yeah, it's the 1/64 scale in farm modeling and model railroading as a whole is neglected. I mean, you look at it's getting a little bit better with 3D printing and whatnot, but if you look at the scale aspect of it, you look at what's available, for S scale modelers, like the late 50s is pretty much the cutoff of what's available for locomotives, for rolling stock. If you're lucky, you get into the early to mid 60s. Yes, you have a few new pieces that have come out, but a handful compared to HO scale, compared to O scale. It just doesn't have the backing because of the Flyer stigmatism to the scale.
I think you're right. I hate to say it, but I think you're right. And I think it's also why a lot of manufacturers, model railroad manufacturers, when they build structures, they do not think about the farm modeler as a part of their potential market.
Well, and it's not just farm modelers. It's toy truck and construction guys. It's other
Yeah.
die cast guys. You know, there's so much. There's so many subcategories in 1/64 scale modeling that it ain't even funny. I mean, my wife will tell you that she knows that there's so much stuff in this scale, looking at pictures and looking at displays and stuff, that she can't believe that the major manufacturers are ignoring us. And she is not a modeler. She doesn't care about it, honestly, but she can go around and she can tell you that there are, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of modelers, you know, in all the different subcategories of 1/64 scale modeling. And they are just, you know, when it comes to major railroad and supply and everything else, they're just ignored overall.